Hey, hello. This is Chiak, and we're finally back to this. Yeah, it's been since the end of April since I last read through the cold reading. Yeah, I keep getting distracted by life and other things. Either way, I'm doing this. It is 10:10 or 10:11 at night here, and I'm thinking, might as well just get it done. Part two of episode 9. So hopefully I'm starting off the right place. Most likely I would have left off at this subtitle here. Oh boy, I feel like I'm on a constant need to hiccup. Either way, let's get started with Death Stranding Volume 2. Death Stranding Volume 2, uh, novelized by Hitori Nojima, translated by Carley Radford. Episode 9, Part 2. Midwest Region, Devo Biologist Shelter. The likeness of the man destined to save this world flickered onto the monitor. It was an image of an unshaven porter with his hair tied back at the back of his head. It was Sam Porter Bridges, the sole member of Bridges 2. In this small, dim, and gloomy room that the Evo Devo biologists both worked and lived in, the monitor seemed to glow all the more brightly with him. She was excited because this man was about to come here and connect her lonely outpost to a vast new world. It had been 2 days since Hartman had let her know that Sam was on his way. And when she estimated the distance between Hartman's lab and her own, she was sure that he would be arriving any time now. Her colleague had already sent her a message letting her know that Sam had dropped by. The geologist had gone on and on about how wonderful it had been to use the chiral network to restore all the materials, data, and theories that had been previously lost. Every word of his message oozed excitement and hope. He also reported that since he had been posted out here, he had been steadily investigating the local strata and had discovered something that seemed to link past mass extinctions with Death Stranding, a fossil beach. That alone would topple the prevailing Big Five theory. Once the chiral network covered the entire continent, they could expect to make even greater discoveries. The geologist ended his message with how much he hoped that Sam would reach her place soon, too. Now, Sam was finally about to arrive. The Evo Devo biologist had shared her hypothesis with Hartman and her other researcher colleagues. Now she wanted to verify it. She also had something she needed to ask Sam in particular. It was about a porter who had made deliveries here a few times in the past. She accepted it was unlikely that Sam would know him, but still, she wanted to know what had happened to the man. Did you hear about all that weird stuff that's been bubbling up out west lately? The porter made a funny expression as he stored his cargo. Would you happen to know anything about that, Evie? Evie was a nickname that Porter had given the Evo Devo biologist. Her real name was of Scandinavian origin. Sorry, this is a different person. Okay, either way. Evie was a nickname the Porter had given the Evo Devo biologist. Her real name was of Scandinavian origin, and the Porter, knowing he would never remember it, had opted to call her by her profession. Evie was a shortened version of evolutionary development biologist. Technically, she should have been called Edie, but that was beside the point. When she pointed out the mistake to the porter, he simply brushed it off with a "don't sweat the tiny details. Evie sounds like Eve." This porter had been delivering cargo to Evie ever since she had first come out here with Hartman and the others on Bridges 1. Bridges had their own porters, but there had been a labor shortage, so they had enlisted the help of a voluntary porter organization. This man was a courier from Fragile Express. He had a lot had happened since they first met. Her friend from Bridges 1, Mama, had fallen victim to a terrorist attack, and Middle Knot City had been wiped off the map in a nuclear blast. Terrorism was rife in this area too. Ever since Bridges 1 had come here espousing about how they were going to rebuild America, they had met violent resistance from the separatists who claimed that Bridges were invaders coming for their freedom. They were out there waiting, minds made up and guns in hand. But the porter still came regularly. The strange substance the porter had asked her about was the tar that was bubbling up from under the ground. Although, to be more accurate, it was more tar like. And just as the porter had guessed, it interested Evie greatly. It was one of the inexplicable phenomena that had begun to occur after the Death Stranding. No one knew its structure, its properties, or where it originally came from, but Evie had heard a theory that it welled up out of place connected to the beach. And if she could investigate that, it might bring her one step closer to understanding the origin of the Death Stranding. The only thing standing in her way was the threat of terrorism if she went out west to investigate. Then I'll bring some back for you, the porter offered. Evie thought he was kidding. There was a possibility that this substance was connected to the beach. It wasn't safe to go near without the proper expertise and equipment. Collecting something like that was the job of Bridges. After Evie saw the porter off, she forgot about the porter's offer, brushing it off as a casual joke. Then 3 months later, the porter returned, together with a case of the tar. But even through the hologram, Evie could tell that the man's vibe and appearance had dramatically changed. In the past, the porter had been a diligent young worker embarking on an apprenticeship, but now he seemed more like a shell-shocked soldier. Evie had never actually seen a soldier in real life, but the cylindrical device on his shoulder somehow also reminded her of them. There was a separate round container equipped to the left-hand side of his chest. This is the bridge, baby. It can access the beach, the man explained, caressing the pod attentively. It was all thanks to this I was able to get that for you. The man pointed at the case of tar. His voice sounded hoarse and exhausted. The case contained 5 reinforced glass cylinders. Each one was filled with a black liquid. A scientist like you might make fun of me for saying this, but this world isn't what it seems to be. What we see with the naked eye is but one part. It's really made up of layer after layer after layer. When I use this bridge, baby, I can see one of the layers that my eyes can't. When I went to collect this stuff, I got the shock of my life. There were holes everywhere. And I don't mean in the ground. I mean in the empty space around everything else. There are holes there too. The porter pointed at the space above her head, and Evie ducked. It's okay. It's so small that I barely even noticed it, but may already be adapting to this change in the wait. But the holes the tar comes out from are much bigger. They're big enough for a human to pass through. I bet they lead back to the beach. Evie imagined a cartoon of Swiss cheese in her head. She wondered if those holes were traces of a dimension that mankind's perception and thought didn't extend to. And this equipment could visualize them. I was able to get the tar using this bridge baby to avoid the holes. The porter continued. A smile spasmed across the porter's face for the first time since he arrived. Evie was trying to decide how to thank the man when he stopped her. I don't need your gratitude. Just tell me what you think the stuff is, he said. Of course you would. Evie's face broke into a smile, but the porter's expression remained deadly serious. It was starting to give her the creeps. This this tar began to appear after the Death Stranding. You know that much, don't you? Evie asked. Just like the timefall, the beach, the cryptobiotes, and the BTs. Chiral matter, too. Now, none of these things are good for humans. They all make it harder for us to survive. So, think back to when life first emerged on this planet, when the atmosphere was full of methane and carbon. It was completely different to how it is now. Then, one type of life called cyanobacteria emerged. It was an algae that fed on photosynthesis and, much like the algae of modern times, produced enormous quantities of oxygen. So much so that it filled the entire atmosphere with it. Unfortunately, much of other life on the planet had evolved to rely on the carbon and methane. Oxygen was toxic to it. So, what couldn't adapt to this new environment went extinct. Tar and timefall are the defining features of the post stranding ecosystem. As you just heard, sudden environmental changes such as these invariably lead to the extinction of organisms that fail to adapt. Those that do adapt do so by virtues of enhancers, the regions of DNA that grant successful organisms their advantages. These genetic factors are the key to evolution, but there are genes which have the opposite effect, those which disadvantage organisms, extinction factors, as they have been called. Some people say that the extinction of these traits is proof that mankind is headed for extinction. Sorry. Some people say that the existence of these traits is proof that mankind is headed for extinction. But I don't think so. Sure, extinction factors are supposedly responsible for the extinction nightmares suffered by those with dooms. In fact, that's why they call it dooms, after ruin and the last judgment. But that doesn't mean that the extinction of those with dooms has to usher in the extinction of mankind. On the contrary, perhaps those who can perceive extinction can help us avoid it. Extinction factors are a broad concept that present across biology, psychology, and sociology. Their presence in these areas suggests that humans may already be adapting to this change in the environment. In the end, enhancers and extinction factors are the seeds of advancement and obsolescence. Such factors may lie dormant within such factors may lie dormant within us all, a choice waiting to be made for every being since the advent of life itself. On the other hand, there's also a theory that hypothesizes the existence of something that blows past the millions of years that natural evolution and extinction takes. Extinction entities. The beach connects the worlds of the living and the dead, and the BTs came here via the beach. Then, through contact with the living, they cause voidouts that turn everything back to nothing. In other words, BTs exist to drive humanity to extinction. Some people may disagree, but I believe that it is the BTs who are the extinction entities. Extinction entities. Do those really exist? The porter asked. After listening to Evie quietly for a while, the color in the porter's face suddenly changed. Then, I guess extinction. I guess extinction is a fate that we can't escape. But if it's already set in motion, why do we still struggle? Why do we crawl shamefully all over the earth, delivering cargo, just to keep us here that little bit longer? The change in the porter's tone was so drastic. It was like he had suddenly switched personalities with someone. Evie couldn't look at him any longer. It was like he was possessed. The same species can't remain dominant forever. Humanity can't be the only ones to survive extinction. Do you think the Ammonites and the dinosaurs resisted extinction like we do? Of course not. They graciously accepted their destiny. They weren't just unintelligent enough to avoid it. Humanity goes around recording and sharing our past to help us predict our future. And because of that, we assume that we can change our destiny, that we can overcome something like the Death Stranding. But it's all lies. This world doesn't need us anymore. It's trying to evict us, to make room for the next species. And the harder we try, and the harder we struggle against it, the more we sully it. Being holed up in here. I bet you have no idea how beautiful the outside world is, do you? How harsh it is. The world didn't change into what it is now for mankind's sake. It's trying to change for the life that comes next. The porter was talking so fervently, he was foaming at the mouth. Evie didn't have anything she could say back to him. Evie believed there was a way out of the situation. Wasn't that why she came here in the first place? Wasn't that why she continued this research all alone? But contrary to the porter's belief, Evie knew the outside world. She had seen and experienced it through her fieldwork and when she first came here with Bridges 1. That was why she couldn't refute him. She herself had been struck so many times by the virgin beauty of this world and the ugliness of the cities that had been erected in its nooks and crannies. Why don't we just let ourselves go extinct? We don't have the right or the means to prevent it anyway. We should at least bow out gracefully. The Ammonites and the dinosaurs managed it well enough. At least we'd be left with a little dignity. I heard about the extinction entities too. Someone told me that an extinction entity is the one creating these BTs and connecting them with this world. And ever since I got this new equipment, I've come to believe that they really exist. The porter went on, showing Evie the equipment on his chest. This is a bridge that connects this world and that world. Our boss gave me this. He said that we are no longer just for transporting cargo. We're to bring extinction over from that world and vacate our position on this one for the next generation of life. Evie had no answers for the man. She was afraid. The porter in front of her was no longer the porter she had once known. It was like he had been brainwashed by some cult. He was trapped in this extreme thinking that perceived extinction as being of primary importance. What if the equipment he had on his chest was what was feeding him these lies? But even if that thing attached to him wasn't brainwashing him, could the porter really be right in claiming that it wasn't the BTs that were the extinction entities, but something that existed on an even higher plane? There were certainly others who thought so. She couldn't refute him on that point either. Even if he had put the pieces of the puzzle together wrong, what could they do if the concepts they signified were real? Evie came back to her senses when the porter broke down, crying like a child. What's happening to me? Every night I have the same dream. It's always a dream of extinction. They frighten me, he sobbed. I'm all alone on the beach, and even if I scream, no one answers. No matter no matter how far I walk, the view never changes. Even though I know it's a dream, I feel like an infinite amount of time is passing, and I can't breathe. I try to kill myself, time and time again, but no matter what I do, it never works. Something comes toward me from beyond the sea instead. I try to see what it is, but I can't. So petrified that I can't even run away. I'm so afraid that I'll try to kill. I'm so afraid that I try to kill myself before it can get to me, but that never works either. I'm so scared. And then it kills me. The porter sniffled, and he looked up at Evie. It looked like his expression was back to normal. The real him was back. At least, that was what Evie wanted to believe. This thing, this equipment, it whispers to me. It tells me that I'm only afraid because I can't see what the thing I dream about is. It tells me that it'll show me what it looks like, that it'll tell me what extinction really looks like. Then I won't be afraid anymore. It tells me that I won't be afraid of dying or extinction anymore. The porter blabbered on. Evie nodded. She explained that the reason why the Death Stranding was such a terrifying phenomenon was because no one understood it. No one knew why the BTs, the beach, the timefall, where the tar appeared, and that was why they feared it and walled themselves away in their cities. That was why people like Evie had to keep on digging. The porter feebly shook his head at her words. But you've not been given the answers yet. And even if you spend years studying this tar I brought you, we're all doomed to die before you ever understand anything. The porter stood up, followed by Evie. Promise me, if you do find anything about that tar, Evie, that you'll tell me. Evie wanted him to wait. She understood what he was saying, but she wanted him to know that she was determined to find the clues that would help them sidestep extinction. But before she could open her mouth, the porter had disappeared. The hologram equipment that the pair used to converse had been switched off, but he should still have been physically present nearby. Evie hurried up to the ground level entrance. As the door to ground level opened, she was enveloped in the light pouring in from the outside. She squinted in the brightness. Wait! She screamed, but the porter had already left her shelter and was walking away. All she could see was his back. Wait! She shouted again, but the porter didn't do so much as even turn his head. A few days later, reports of a terrorist attack came through from a colony outside of Mountain Knot City. A void out had killed Hartman's wife and daughter, and left Hartman himself wandering the border between life and death. Evie carried on with her work. It had been 2 years since that conversation with the porter, but she still hadn't managed to fulfill her promise to him. Not because she hadn't seen him, but because she hadn't uncovered a single thing. Evie's job wasn't to just analyze the tar, but when she thought about it, that jet black substance had been the only thing on her mind for some time now. Now that Sam Porter had embarked on his quest to connect the chiral network, the scientists in the East had been able to gradually restore some of the archives Evie had sent away for any data pertaining to extinction entities and the tar. But since her area hadn't been connected yet, she had to rely upon the meager telecommunication system she was currently equipped with, and she was getting impatient. Forget movies, she couldn't even receive large images. All she could do was rely on a network of way stations to receive text data. Even when she received data in text format, she had lost count of the number of times they had arrived broken or with bits missing. There was also the issue of the tar. The tar had been bubbling up in the west. The tar that had been bubbling up in the west had been more active recently, but she didn't know why. She hadn't even managed to find out where the tar was coming from in the first place, so there was nothing she could do. Not only had the scattered bubblings Not only had the scattered bubbling springs of tar began to increase in number, they were also getting larger and now formed a line that ran north to south. The points where the tar was bubbling forth had started to form a small river, and the area had become known as the Tar Belt. It continued to expand and had even swallowed up some nearby way stations that were supposed to be used for the chiral network. It was impossible to predict what the tar would do next, so they couldn't get too close. To Evie, Sam Porter was the messiah who would restore the way station and finally connect her up to the chiral network. And he was due any day now. Then the day finally arrived. When she thought about it, it had indeed been quite a while since she had last received a visitor. It was because once Evie found out that Fragile Express, the porter company that her porter friend had worked for, had effectively come under the control of Higgs, she had no choice but to rely on the few porters from Bridges or freelancers instead. When people did drop by, it made her feel less nervous. But not this time. Sam was bringing the Cupid, and Evie couldn't contain her excitement. As soon as Sam entered the shelter, the delivery terminal activated, and a hologram was projected into the air. The projection showed the silhouette of a slender girl. She was a scientist named Evie. He noticed her expression stiffened. Sam wasn't surprised. He hardly had the easiest face to look at. He hadn't looked in the mirror lately, but he assumed he was covered in blood, sweat, and mud like usual. Sam wasn't in the mood for greetings or explaining himself. The woman should have been notified that Sam was on his way, since even though this was a shelter, it was still under the control of Bridges. He was a visiting colleague, after all. Sam cleared security, but the woman's face was still stiff. When Sam traced her gaze, he noticed that her attention was fixed on Lou. Is it you? It is you, isn't it, Sam? The woman's voice was trembling slightly. It looked like she was scared of the pod. I was instructed to come here by Hartman and Bridges. My name is Sam Porter Bridges. I'd like you to let me to activate the chiral network here. Do you have a problem with that? The woman shook her head, but her expression didn't change in the slightest, and she continued staring at Lou. Not bothering to ask her why, Sam took out the Cupid and held it up. That was when the woman's face finally relaxed. Go ahead, Sam. I've been waiting for you. Please connect me right away. Evie thanked Sam and he connected her shelter to the UCA. I'm sorry, Sam, but can I ask you something? That thing on your chest, what is it for? Sam faltered for a second at the abrupt question. Did she mean in the practical sense or the theoretical sense? Sam supposed he could sum it up by explaining that the BB was used. Sam supposed he could sum it up by explaining that the BB was used for sensing BT, but he knew the BB was more than just that. Still, did he need to explain so much to the scientist who was seeing a BB for the first time? Evie watched Sam try to come up with the answer and seemed to accept it when he couldn't. It was like she had guessed that there wasn't really an answer either way. I used to know a porter who carried one of those things, she told him. Sam felt his own face stiffen this time, as he remembered the terrorist group he had encountered on his way here. He told me that when he used it, he could see all kinds of things. He said it had told him that humanity was destined for extinction. Does yours do the same, Sam? No. This one is my partner. Lou tells me when I'm in danger. If I didn't have this BB, I would never have made it all the way here alone, Sam answered. If what the woman said was true, it meant that the thing attached to the porter's chest was no BB. It just happened to look like one. Then it struck him. The equipment that Higgs and the other terrorists had strapped to their chests might not have been BBs either. Or, at the very least, they weren't the same as Lou. Maybe that was why Lou was so upset when they had encountered them. The porter I knew cried, Evie recalled. He said he was scared. He said that he was having dreams of extinction and had become unable to resist them any longer. He confessed that to me. Then he never came back. Lou gave a cry. It wasn't out of fear, but out of sadness. This had never happened before. Lou was looking up at Sam from inside the pod. Sam looked into Lou's eyes, but he couldn't tell where Lou's sadness was coming from. When Sam looked back up, Evie's hologram had disappeared. Perhaps she had finally given up on getting answers at all out of him. Maybe she was just satisfied now she was hooked up to the chiral network. In any case, Sam's work here was done. It didn't matter how Evie felt about things. Sam was worried about his crying BB and turned to leave. Something Sam couldn't put his finger on lingered in this place. Harsh noises echoed around the room. Sam turned back around to see the image of an unfamiliar man projected where Evie's hologram had once stood. He was wearing a hood low over his eyes, so Sam couldn't really tell what the man looked like. He wasn't so tall, but Sam could tell that he was made from lean muscle. It was a body that looked like it hadn't been honed. It was a body that looked like it had been honed through daily labor. The worn and faded suit the man was wearing bore the name Fragile Express. On his left shoulder was an Odra deck, and on his chest was a BB. Both were slightly different to the ones that Sam used, but matched the ones the terrorists possessed. That meant that a terrorist was lurking in the basement. Was this a setup? Sam instinctively grabbed for the ID strand around his waist. It was the only thing he had to hand that it was the only thing he had to hand. It was the only thing he had on hand that could be used as a weapon. This is goodbye, the man began. My body no longer belongs to me. I'm not afraid anymore. The man's ultra deck began to rotate, but Lou didn't react in the slightest. This was a recording. It was probably a message sent meant for Evie. So this was the porter she had been talking about. We cannot run away from our destiny, or our destiny of is we cannot run away from our destiny, and our destiny is extinction. Extinction will open the door to a brand new world. That's why I had to take out that city. What did he just say? Was he declaring an act of terrorism? Sam sensed someone's presence appear behind the hologram. The door that led to the basement floor opened. Standing there was Evie. Her face was pale as she rushed up the steps toward Sam. Evie, I believe that what you're doing is noble. The porter's hologram continued to speak. You think that studying the past will lead to a better future. I used to think so too, back when I was a porter. You know, America was already gone by the time I was born. I didn't really have any memories from when I was a kid. Don't even remember what my parents looked like. All I remember is the face of Fragile's pop. Evie stood next to Sam, looking at the man. That man took me in and raised me. He told me all about how America used to be. He said America was so free before it all came crumbling down. He told me it had its problems that he wasn't proud of, but that the spirit of the ancestors who had founded the country still lived on. He told me we should look at the destruction of America as a fresh start, that we would build America again with our own hands. Even after the man died and Fragile took over the organization, that never changed. The porter fell silent. He was looking up as though he was searching for something. Sam and Evie watched attentively. But we're never going to get America back. Bridges' chiral network is only going to build an invisible wall around it. That's not the real America, or so Higgs says. Sam's jaw stiffened at the mention of Higgs' name. No matter how much we struggle, while we're human, we're never going to be able to build a perfect country on this earth. We can spout whatever grand ideas we like, and the country we create will be nothing more than a sham. Higgs says that if we really want to make the perfect country, then we have to stop being human. That's why extinction is coming for us. How ridiculous. Sam's inner voice of reason told him that this man was just rambling to justify his act of terrorism. But there was a part of Sam that couldn't deny what the madman, was saying. See you, Evie. I'm going to wipe out a colony near Mountain Knot City. It's okay. I promise you they won't suffer. The void out will send them to the other side instantaneously. Then they'll travel to the land of dead and finally be released from the curse of being human. It's all part of the extinction entity's plan. The hologram froze like it was stuck in time. The hologram froze like it was stuck in time. Evie weakly shook her head and stared at Sam. She looked like she wanted Sam to comfort her, but there was nothing that Sam could do. Lou cried out, breaking the silence. Lou's cries didn't sound as sad as before, but Sam could still feel so much emotion in them that they hurt. Lou's cries were so full of fear and anger that it was almost like they would shatter the pod. As if in response to Lou's cries, the image displayed by the hologram began to crumble, decomposing into fine particles. But then the diffusing particles began to clump back together again. An invisible force was binding them together to create a different image entirely. Over its face was a hood, within it a dully glowing golden mask. There was an odor deck on the figure's shoulder and a pod on their chest. It was Higgs. Sam couldn't see the eyes under the mask, but he just knew that the man's gaze was right on him. It was such an intense stare that it didn't seem like it could belong to a hologram. This didn't appear to be a recording. In fact, to Sam it seemed almost certainly to be some kind of interactive interactive actively interactively interactively generated image. Thank you, Sam, for connecting up the chiral network for me. Higgs bowed his head dramatically. It's simply breathtaking. Now I understand why you were in such a hurry to finish it. I can restore the memories of the past. Color me surprised. I had no idea that was possible. The chiral network runs from the beach, and the beach connects to the realm of the dead and all the lost history found within it. That's a big deal. At best, I thought it would only be able to piece together and restore digital data. It was clear that Higgs was trying to goad Sam with his overdramatic gestures and tones. Sam gritted his teeth and exerted as much self control as possible. Lou seemed to pick up on his anger and drew into a tight ball. Keep it up, Sam. The idea of the UCA coming back doesn't exactly instill me with joy, but this is great. And if I have this, I won't have to make all that effort. I won't have to make all that effort. Shoot, sorry, I'm trying to turn the page. I won't have to make all that effort to jump through the beach anymore just to find you. I can just give you another call. Higgs reached straight out at Sam. Sam pulled back instinctively, but Higgs' arm reached right through the BB pod, piercing through Lou and into his chest. Sam was frozen stiff and couldn't move. Higgs broke into a cruel laugh. Don't be scared. I'm just a hologram. Just a virtual image. It's not like you're being touched by a person. Guess the chiral network is perfect for someone with your condition. Good luck. Higgs withdrew his arms, but something shone at his fingertips. Sam reasoned in his head that it had to be a trick of the hologram, but soon he couldn't keep his shaking at bay. Higgs hung the item that had flashed around his own neck. It was a golden accessory. Amelia's Cupu. Sam was in excruciating pain as he felt like his heart was being crushed in his chest. He couldn't make a sound. His head spun and he fell to his knees. I'll be waiting for you on the beach, Higgs said as he disappeared. Still on his knees, Sam looked up to see that there was nothing left where the man had just been standing. The pain in his chest had also vanished like it was never really there in the first place. Evie looked up. Her face was drained of color. Are you okay? She asked. Sam nodded and got up. How about you? It seems like this place is connected to Higgs now. It's fine, Evie answered. Just a little shaken up. I've never expected something so terrifying to come through the chiral network. But at least that wasn't all it brought. Now I know that we can restore the past that wasn't recorded onto other media. She was talking about the recording of the porter. I had a feeling that he had gotten himself involved in terrorism, but still hurt to hear from the horse's mouth. To be honest with you, Sam, I can't deny the things that he said, even though I'm certain he was brainwashed by Higgs. But I suppose the important thing is not trying to disprove my friend's point, but to find a way to overcome them. And that includes all the things that Higgs said, too. We must keep expanding the chiral network and identify the EE to do that. I'm not afraid of what that means. Sure, this situation is frightening, but I don't have time to be scared. Sam reassured Evie that he understood. The theory of extinction that Higgs whispered into his followers' ears was a doctrine touted by the extinction entity. But Bridget's idea of America was nothing more than doctrine either. The only way to break free from them both was to give up on being human. Extinction and prolonging life were just opposite sides of the same coin. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to see who's speaking this dialogue. Sure, this situation is frightening, but I don't have time to be scared. Evie's words echoed around Sam's head, so Sam decided to get out of there while he could still hear them. Any ex any excess noise now, and her determination and the confidence it gave him might just vanish. Sam put his pack back on and left the shelter without saying another word. Excuse me. Drink water and avoid my attempt to sneeze. Mm-mm-mm-mm. 3 days had passed. Sam had been worried about the rugged terrain and fickle mountain weather, but apart from that, it had been smooth sailing. Now he had connected all three shelters. All that was left for him to do was to reconstruct the way station near the tar belt. Evie had sent him a message while he had been walking. She informed him that she had managed to restore several research reports into past mass extinctions. One report caught Sam's eye. It was data that suggested that extinct species other than ammonites and mammoths had been found with umbilical cord like protrusions extending out of their bodies, including specimens of dinosaurs and trilobites. Evie also mentioned the claims that these extinction animals were EEs themselves. A little while after Sam received Evie's message, he got a call from Hartman too, just as he was getting close to where the way station was going to be. Sam, do you read? You're about to hit the tar belt. Luckily, there doesn't seem to have been much damage to the equipment, thanks to you. Now, all you need to do is take a look at the installation point for us. Anyway, listen. We have less time than I thought we would. Time before his heart gives out again, or before extinction comes for us? I mentioned this before, but the site we have chosen was an original candidate for the way station we lost to the tar belt. Sam remembered they had planned to use this site, but had ended up abandoning it. There were some concerns about safety. This time we're going to repair it and try operating it as a knot. There are some places in this world where it is easy to connect to the beach. These places and objects of worship and holy grounds and the like. People often refer to these places as power spots. You could even say that megaliths, like the pyramids and Stonehenge, are traces of where mankind attempted to make contact with the beach. Now, beaches may vary from person to person, but there are some places in particular that that many people find themselves drawn to. And the beach is inextric- in- inextricably connected to religious and spiritual things. In other words, those places can be used as knots on the chiral network. However, there is also a danger of getting too close to the beach. Bridges 1 took note of that and originally built the way station somewhere else. That was the one that got swallowed up by the tar. But under the current circumstances, we now have no other option but to use the foundation of the original abandoned site. Luckily, the basic systems are still intact. Anyway, once you arrive, I want you to do something for me. Check the status of your BB. It shouldn't be difficult. Just see if it's reacting to anything. You can laugh, cry, or even show fear. As long as it shows some kind of reaction, it means that where you are is an access point to the beach. Very perceptive, Sam. You just thought of not city, didn't you? You just thought of not cities, didn't you? He hadn't, but Hartman kept on talking. Sam heard the 5 minutes to cardiac arrest. Countdown began. 5 minutes to cardiac arrest countdown begin in the background. I just realized I'm totally using the wrong voice, but I can't remember what voice I used. It's a long time ago. The knot cities are built in places where the timefall doesn't fall. Theoretically, they're the places that are furthest away from the beach. So, do we use those cities as large-scale communication bases? That's right, Sam. Places where many people gather are just like holy places and places of worship, where are where there are as many beaches as people. At the same time, the cities are secular, with no single unifying belief system. To solve this contradiction, Bridges One prepared a special system. It's top secret, even I don't know much about it. In fact, I wasn't even briefed on it. I first heard about it from Dead Man. He said he discovered it while he was investigating the BB experiments. 2 minutes to cardiac arrest, a robotic voice warned. Listen, Sam. I'm having this conversation with you through an old radio. It isn't being relayed back to HQ. It seems like HQ are hiding something about the BBs, about your Lou. It's highly likely that it's linked to the origins of the chiral network and the reconstruction of the UCA. Deadman was extremely scared that Die Hardman was going to find out about our investigation. 1 minute to cardiac arrest. Anyway, if we don't get the network up and running, then we'll never get anywhere. Trust me. Put your faith in this scholar of the beach. The codec went silent and Hartman's 3 minutes death commenced. Tarbelt shore. So this is what the apocalypse looks like. Sam was stood in a world that would usher in mankind's end. Or perhaps it was just the world's physical end. A sea of tar extended so far out westward that Sam had trouble believing that Edge-Knot City lay beyond it at all. The shore was littered with masses of toppled, jagged rocks, and there wasn't a single sign of life to be found. No creeping moss, no microbes that inhabited the sandy soil. The sun was so thickly blocked out by the chiral clouds that covered the sky that Sam had no idea where it was. But it didn't feel like night. It wasn't even dark. A dim light filled the world. In Sam's mind, this was a world where nothing new began and nothing new was ever born. A crossfit for a giant lay upon this shore of demise. It was made of a rough black iron. It was the apparatus of crucifixion. But who was here to receive their punishment and atone for their sins? The crucifix lay forgotten on a shore where there was only sin and punishment, no sign of sinner nor savior. It dawned on Sam that this was the abandoned chiral network knot. To him, it felt neither sublime nor ominous. The only distinct feeling he had toward it was the feeling that he didn't want to get any closer to it. Before he knew it, tears were spilling down his face. Sam didn't even need to check for Lou's reaction. He could feel this proximity to the beach throughout his entire body. It felt different to when he was in BT territory. Sam had never imagined that such a barren place could exist. Did it have something to do with the abrupt increased activity of the tar? Sam asked himself, looking out over the tar belt that stretched out beyond the crucifix. If there was a perfect place for a communications knot, this would be it. Sam knew that much. Lou was getting worked up. Unless it was Sam's own uneasiness infecting the BB. When Sam went to activate the Cupid receptor, the power supply apparatus rose first, followed by the terminal itself. Sam unloaded the hefty cargo from his back and set it down according to the terminal's instructions. The units connected to the cross one by one and were stored inside. That was when Sam finally realized that the crucifix itself was the communications equipment. He followed the instructions in the message, which prompted him to activate the knot and help up his 6 metal shards. An odor filled Sam's nostrils. His vision warped and he felt like he was floating. Tears flowed from the corners of his eyes. Now this area was covered by the chiral network. The problem now was what came afterward. Sam sighed in front of the tar belt. How the hell am I supposed to make it to Edge-Knot City? Sam, I knew you could do it. Thanks to you, the relay is back online. So far, there are no issues with strength or safety. Lochna's going to keep an eye on this area too, so there shouldn't be any need to worry. Okay, it was Hartman. It was Hartman. He was using the terminal's communication function to project his hologram. I just got back from the beach. I've got 21 minutes until the next trip, so listen carefully, he continued. The hologram suddenly disappeared. Maybe the connection was unstable, or maybe this is what they got for such a hastily cobbled together piece of junk. Sam called Hartman's name out toward the terminal, but there was no reply. Then his cufflinks activated. Hartman was calling again, requesting voice-only communications. Sam fiddled with his cufflink to pick up. I know that the chiral network is online now, but I want us to use this older system. I don't want anyone from HQ listening in. Sam detected what seemed to be a hint of nervousness in Hartman's voice among all the noise and static. Then Hartman began to recount his incredible findings. I looked at the umbilical cord that you brought in with Mama's body. In reclaiming our past, we've uncovered a number of vital clues, and using them, I've come up with a theory. When you met with Mama, you experienced a strong antigen antibody reaction, correct? Sam thought back to when he first visited Mama's lab. Hartman was right. Sam had the same feeling as when he approached BT territory. Lou reacted the same way too. But Sam didn't think it was too unusual given the situation there. There was a BT in the room, he explained. There was, but something else may have been causing it. I've discovered large quantities of chiral matter in Mama as well. Not just the usual kind that collects on our skin or on our suits. It's in all her cells that are no longer active. Sam remembered how Mama's breath never showed white in her cold lab, and how she had unfastened her cufflink on one hand so that her vitals couldn't be detected. It was all evidence that pointed toward her being dead. It was only thanks to the connection with her BT daughter that she was able to move in the first place. Sam had surmised that much on his own. Sam had surmised that much on his own, but now it looked like there was more. The BT you encountered there was special. It was her child, but also her own soul. Somehow, her ka and ha failed to separate. They must have remained connected through the umbilical cord. In other words, Mama was in a state of being both alive and dead. Did that mean that her ha and ka were both stuck between life and death? Mama's daughter was like Lou. So if Sam was connected to Lou, did that make him just like Mama? Sam had so many questions, but he didn't feel like asking them out loud. Hartman carried on talking as if Sam's silence as Hartman carried on talking as if he took Sam's silence as affirmation to continue. I have a message for you from Deadman. He says that he's sorry. That you deserve to know what you were carrying, but he couldn't risk Die Hardman finding out about the case. So he had no choice but to keep it off the books. Thanks to you, Sam, the umbilical cord finally reached me all the way from Capital Knot City. You mean that wasn't Mama's umbilical cord? Sam asked. The umbilical cord was taken from Bridget Strand. The man removed it in secret at her request when she was still alive. The cord wasn't attached to a fetus. It was outside her body. She asked him to take care of it, said it was the key to unlocking the Death Stranding. Bridget's umbilical cord and Mama's body have a lot of things in common. They show no signs of decomposition or necrotization. And it's almost like they're frozen in time. Like they've been released from the flow of time in this world. We also detected chiralium in the umbilical cord, just like what we detected in Mama. That means that the president's umbilical cord may have been connected to the beach. Herman's hypothesis was bold, but what was more shocking was the revelation that the umbilical cord was attached to Bridget. The fact that Amelia was born on the beach must have been closely related to this umbilical cord. Life on Earth had been rocked by many extinctions, great and small, including the Big Five. And if you examine the Earth's strata, its history, if you will, you'll find Carillion deposits and beach fossils that can be dated to each. What if the manifestation of beaches and other associated phenomena correspond to extinction level events? Our Death Stranding could just be the latest of many. The records and research you helped us to recover strongly suggest that we are in the middle of the sixth extinction. So it was true. And this time humanity was up for the chopping block? There's no doubt about it now. Thanks to the chiral network, we've managed to piece together records of other extinction creatures being discovered with umbilical cords: trilobites, ammonites, dinosaurs, the mammoth, the iceman, all, without exception, found with umbilical cords, which is to say that all may have been connected to the beach. In this, when viewed in the context of the extinction entity theory that Evie is researching, leads me to surmise that organisms with strands are in fact extinction entities. You see, Sam, EEs are connected to the beach via their strands, and it is through this connection that they somehow bring about a death stranding. Harmon had been speaking so fast that Sam had barely managed to keep up. Just popping in to say hi before going to sleep. Good night. You can listen to this later in the morning. I'm taking this opportunity to get a drink of water though. That's it. This episode is almost done here. I don't think I can show. So you're saying Bridget was an extinction entity? It's far too soon to say anything for certain. And since you burned her body, we may never know. Sam had more pressing question. Sam had a more pressing question on his mind, but wasn't sure how to put it into words. Higgs had referred to Amelia as an extinction entity. Sam, think. Assume that President Strand was an EE. Isn't it possible that her daughter is, too? Hartman said, as if he had read Sam's mind. So, he kidnaps her for her EE powers or whatever to cause a mass extinction? Sam mused. Perhaps, perhaps not. I doubt a single EE is powerful enough to cause a death stranding. Assuming Amelia, or indeed Bridget, is an EE, although Higgs certainly seems to think she has what it takes. Sam knew that whatever Amelia was or was not, they still had to get her back from Higgs. 1 minute to cardiac arrest. Sam heard the countdown continue. I'm sorry, Sam. Time's up. In any case, we need you to go out west and save Amelia. Then the transmission cut out, and Sam was left all alone again in the desolate shore. Edgenut City lay out there, somewhere, way out west, but all Sam could see was the thick black sea in front of him. A fishy smell blew toward him from the top. A fishy smell blew toward him from across the tar belt. The breeze it rode in on, tickling Sam's cheek. Sam may have been successful in activating the way stations, that gigantic crucifix telecommunication terminal, but he had been stuck on the shore for quite a while now, unable to find a way across the tar. Excuse me. He had walked all along the bank searching for a point to cross on foot, but had, so far, been all in vain. Didn't Bridges know how bad it was out here? Perhaps they had just been optimistic that if anyone could find a way across, Sam the repatriate would. He couldn't. He couldn't think of a single solution. Even though he had reconnected the country this far, even though it was now just a final push until he reached Amelia, he was stuck. London Bridge is falling down, falling down, falling down. Sam could hear the song that Amelia always sang for him on the beach when he was a boy. He looked around, but there was no one and nothing to be found. It was just Sam. The bridge had fallen, and now there was nothing else he could do. He couldn't connect back to Amelia across the tar. That's not true, Sam. It was as if he could hear her. The wind picked up. This time it brought another voice with it. Do you still not get it? Or do you just not want to? Oh, wait. Do you still not get it? Or do you just not want to? The tar was swelling upwards, forming the shape of a human being. Higgs. Amelia is an extinction entity, Higgs began. She may take the form of a woman, but she is connected to the realm of the dead. She connects all life to death. Harmon's right. All the past extinctions were caused by extinction entities like her. There's no denying it. It's the truth of this universe. This universe was created in an explosion. When stars explode, their fragments produce new ones. The explosion of extinction gives way to new life. Listen here, Sam. We're not just going extinct. We're creating the next phase of existence. It was all wordplay. Higgs was manipulating the language to affirm his path of extinction and affirm his desire to destroy. Sam's body burnt hot with anger. His clenched fists were trembling. That's the cross that humanity has to bear. Higgs pointed at the way station and laughed. It seems like there is someone working for Bridges with a sense of irony. I'll connect with Amelia, stick her on that thing, and finally put extinction into motion. Higgs! Sam shouted, rushing toward the belt of tar. Oh, still got some fighting spirit left in you, Sam? Then may the best man win. Higgs sneered, holding up a finger. Tar was sticking to both of Sam's legs. It seemed to be attempting to pull him down like he had a mind of its own. Before Sam knew it, the tar was already waist deep. Good luck, Sam, Higgs called. I'll be waiting on the beach. Higgs disappeared. The tar surged into a wave, attacking Sam from above. Sam couldn't see a thing. He couldn't hear either. He was trapped in a sticky black torrent and being washed toward the depths of the earth. He was falling forever toward its center. Sam was lost in a dark hallway. All he could hear was his own breathing, the sound of sticky footsteps, and the beating of his own heart. They echoed all around him. The sounds he made shook his eardrums and reverberated inside his head. Infinitely looping, it was starting to drive Sam mad. He was walking around inside the guts of some gigantic creature. Never getting digested and never getting shat back out. It was just wandering with no idea. He was just wandering with no idea where the exit was. Then he noticed that Lou wasn't with him. There was no Odradect on his shoulder. In fact, he wasn't wearing anything at all. Sam was naked and trapped in a place he didn't know. He sank down to the floor and hung his head. He heard the sound of a heart. It was throbbing rhythmically without interruption. That's when he realized that he was hearing the beating from outside. The heart that should have been in his chest dropped like a stone, and elsewhere the other heart moved. Then it clicked. This had to be inside of his own body. He was lost and aimlessly wandering in the maze of his own guts, unable to be at peace with himself. He had become lost inside himself. Unable to be at peace with himself, he had become lost inside himself. Sam wondered if destroying himself would release him from this shell, or would he just die together with it? You're in the same state as the confused masses on this planet. They all believe that the world is here to accommodate them. It doesn't matter that it's all coincidental. It doesn't matter that if it's destroyed, they'll die too. In their heads, they're its kings, and they'll do what they tell it to do. Higgs' voice echoed around the internal maze, snapping Sam back to reality. Sam had been brought back to Higgs. Sam had been brought back by Higgs. A dissonant sound echoed softly. When Sam woke up, the world looked twisted. Sam instantly felt nauseous, like his stomach was full of rocks. Unable to bear it, Sam got on all fours and vomited. He threw up an inexplicable amount of jet black liquid that looked like mud. A stench that contained whiffs of blood and rotting flesh pierced Sam's nostrils. It felt like his body was rotting from the inside out. Sam had no idea where he was. When he looked over his shoulder with as of yet unfocused eyes, all he could make out was the tar belt. Had he made it across? Welcome, Sam Bridges. And that is the end of episode 9. It took me so long to finish part 2 of it. My bad. But yeah, hopefully, I'm assuming because of like my change in schedule, things just kind of messed up for me. I'm wondering on Thursday nights I need to start doing these rather than my usual Friday, because that's technically, I mean, I've been busy, but technically that's when I do like my recordings and stuff like that. Yeah, no, I think just my change in schedule really threw things off for me. Either way, thank you, Ghost RC, for leaving the chat. You know, hopefully you're sleeping well by now. But thank you for liking if you liked. Thank you for commenting if you commented. Thank you for subscribing if you subscribed. And thank you for simply clicking on this video. Until next time, guys. Oh, that's close. See ya. Do 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 do.